Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to recreate this super easy watercolour bee painting. This is a painting that I've been wanting to do for such a long time now, so to be able to share with you exactly how I did this piece step by step is really exciting, and I hope you enjoy painting these bees just as much as I did. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more nature art themed content, and let me know down in the comments how you find this tutorial. And now let's get to the video where I'm going to share everything that I learned along the way when creating this painting. So before you go in with any actual paint, you want to make sure you have a bit of an outline just as the base structure for where the bees are going to go. And to do this, you just want a sharp pencil and to sketch in an oval shape as big or as small as you want your bees to look. And this is really good as well because it means you can structure things according to how you would like them. Rather than going straight in with colour, you can decide if you want your bees to take up the majority of the page, and therefore you would make the ovals bigger and closer together maybe. I decided to space mine far apart as I wanted a little bit of a background as well, but I was really happy with just having that basic sketch to start with. I then created both a really bright yellow and a really bright orange, and this was to contrast with the black. So the brighter the better for this. And you want the orange to be darker than the yellow, as this is going to be used for all of the shadows that the bee has. It's also crucial to pencil in where you would like the wings to go. I just used two little lines to show where I would be putting them later on. For the first bee that I'm going to be painting, the wings were at the top of the bee, and for the bee that I'm painting further down, they were either side, and this is just due to the perspective of both that you'll see a little bit later on. And then you can go in with the yellow and paint the stripes in, and you want to use a pointy brush for this so that you can get really fine tipped edges with the little first strokes. You don't want everything to be that perfect stripe. We're going to blend that black later on slightly into the yellow, so it is important to have things looking a little bit more natural, so a pointy brush is really good for this as you can get them tiny little details in there. Also, you'll notice my stripes for the first bee that I'm going to be painting at the top, they curve round a little bit more, and this is because you want it to look a little bit more realistic and more natural. And if you've got all the stripes the same size without the curves within them, it's going to look really flat and just completely off. Even the bottom bee, everything has a little bit of a curve to it. So that top yellow stripe has a curve, more like an N shape, and then the one below it has more of a U shape, so it does flip just because of the perspective. And then you can dot some of the orange into the areas where you would like the shadows to be. For the first bee, I dotted the orange at the bottom and had that bleed up into the top of the yellow, as that's where the lightest point was going to be. And then for the bee further down, I dotted some of the orange either side, as I wanted the lightest point to be more the centre as opposed to the top. And because the paper is still wet from the yellow, it should blend really nicely and have a very natural blend to it. While the yellow is starting to dry, I think at this point it is the best time to create the black section. So I then pre-mixed the colours before going in. I used black watercolour and added a hint of blue to this, and then I did the exact same, but I watered it down so it was more of a grey colour. This was really important because if you go straight in with black, everything's going to look flat. You're not going to be able to add any shadows at all, and the blue complements this really nicely. It just means that the grey doesn't look quite as dull, it brightens it up just a little bit. I think it works really nicely next to the yellow. And then I did the exact same thing in terms of technique with the small little brush strokes to fill in the stripes, the same that I did with the yellow, and I used the lightest grey to begin with, filled all of that section in, and then went in with the black and just dotted a little bit in there, more towards the bottom of the first bee again, as this is where the shadow is, and for the second bee more on the side, so the lightest point was the centre of that bee. This is a really good way to develop shadow, and it blends so nicely to the yellow because the yellow isn't completely dry. It does start to blend, but it doesn't blend too much that it becomes really muddy and overtakes it, because we allowed a little bit more drying meantime, rather than going straight in with these colours. So if you are to bleed the colours too much by accident, this usually means there is too much water on your paper, and this can be really easy to fix. If you do find this happening and the black just completely spills into the yellow, what you need to do is clean your brush, really make sure it is clean, dry it with some tissue paper and use this to pull out the colour. If it has bled so much so, the black will unfortunately overpower and you'll probably still be able to see it over the yellow. So obviously you want to avoid this as much as possible, but it can be changed, you can alter it slightly. And I think sometimes it looks nice the way things bleed together. Obviously you don't want it to completely overtake, but just be conscious of this. There are ways to change things and alter, but if you can avoid this from the get-go, that is ideal. This is what you want more of. You definitely don't want things to bleed so much so that it ruins your piece so far. And similarly, if you find that they're not bleeding together, it means you've used too little water. Again, I would clean the brush and scrape off all the excess water, as you don't want to then go in too much, as I've just mentioned. And I'd use a little bit of this in between the two colours, going back and forth with the brush, and that will help blend them together as long as the yellow hasn't completely dried. Then, as you can see, I went in and painted the legs, and I used the black again and put 3 little lines down for each leg. Changed the angle slightly every single time that I did this, and it was really easy to paint these in as long as you've got the thin strokes down. And this same rule applies for the antennae that you can add in. Really thin strokes just coming out of the head. The first one I curved around a little bit, and the second I had really straight lines coming out. Again, this is all just due to perspective. Once you're happy with all this, you can go in to paint the wings. To do this, I used a little bit of the grey and mixed a bit of the yellow into that, and it created a really muddy green colour, but it was still kind of on that grey side. It had a little bit of that within there. And it would have been alright to go in with just the grey, but I think it is important to mix the colours up just slightly, as you want to be able to distinctly see the wings. And if it was the grey, it would blend a little bit too much into the grey sections within the bee that we have already. So I really wanted that slight separation, which becomes really clear just because of the different colours. And then you can paint the shape of the wings in. As I mentioned earlier, you've got the one wing at the top, 2 on the bottom bee, and you can blend this out with a little bit of water, but please make sure your brushes are clean for this. You might want to change your water at this point to blend out the wings, and I wanted to do this because everything else blends very nicely together, and without that blend within the wings, it's going to look really harsh in comparison to everything else we've already put down. So once you're happy with how the bees look, you can go in and paint the background. And to do this, you want to use the wet in wet method, using a clean brush, go in and wet all of the area you'd like the background to go. As you can see, I've painted around both the bees, and I went in with a purple and a little bit of blue, but purple was definitely the base colour for the background, as it's complementary to yellow, and I thought together they would look really nice. And because it is the opposite colour, I think it really helped make that yellow pop and just helped the bees stand out a little bit more, which I was really happy with. I think it really helps to define the wings as well. If you paint around them, you can create a really nice smooth edge. My wings are really light, so to have that there was really useful for me to help them pop a little bit more. You can also slightly alter any mistakes that you might have made when painting the bee. I know I had a little bit of smudging. I don't know if you can really see it on camera, but if you did notice, I corrected that and just painted over a little bit of purple. I think it was the bottom bee to the left of that, because I'm left-handed, I just smudged some of the paint across by accident. So to be able to alter that was really useful. And I used the majority of purple and then dotted the blue into the darker purple sections, and that blended really nicely into that. I was really happy with how that looked. Then I added a little bit of grey to my green that we used for the wings. This is to darken it up just slightly, and I used a really thin paintbrush to put a couple of lines through the wings just for a tiny bit of detail. You don't want to overdo this too much, it will take away the really loose feel of the painting. So I did the majority of the lines coming straight out from the bee. I didn't really take it across the full wing and just had it coming out of the body really. But if you do want that detail, this is the perfect opportunity for you to add that in, but it might look a little bit strange compared to the expressive loose style we've used so far. And to finish, I went in with some paint splatters, used a little bit of white over the purple, and I used a darker purple and blue to paint splatter into the background. I used my hand to cover the bees slightly to stop it going into that as much, and it's definitely more useful to hold the paintbrush closer to the page if you're wanting a little bit more control over the paint. If not, hold it further away, but just be conscious it probably won't go where you want it to. And I also used some yellow and orange. I was happy for this to go anywhere, overlapping bees. I think it looked really nice over the purple in the background. I think it blended really well into that. So I was happy for that to go anywhere, but I definitely wanted my purple and blue to be a little bit more controlled. So there we have it. That is how easy it is to paint bees using watercolour. Please let me know how you found this tutorial down below in the comments, and I'll make sure to get back to every single one of you. And I really hope you stick around, like and subscribe for more nature art themed content, and I'll see you all next time. Bye guys!